It was her first day as a teacher, the kind you never forget. The sun hadn't even climbed over the schoolyard when whispers began. By the time roll call ended, laughter had turned into cruelty. A group of boys thought they could humiliate her, thought she was weak, replaceable, an easy target. They were wrong, because within minutes, those same bullies would be standing in front of her, trembling, their faces pale, their arrogance gone. They had no idea that the woman they mocked carried a secret, one that would change everything. When Miss Alara Hayes walked into St. Morton High, she carried more than lesson plans. She carried a story no one knew. To the students, she was just another young teacher trying to make a name for herself. But beneath her calm smile was a woman who had clawed her way out of the same kind of darkness her students lived in: cruelty, poverty, and ridicule. The school itself was infamous, not for its academics, but for its unchecked arrogance. The seniors ruled the halls like little emperors, and teachers either quit or learned to stay silent. The principal had long given up. Alara, however, wasn't like the others. She had chosen this school deliberately because years ago in this very district, she'd been the quiet girl everyone bullied. And now, she was back. Not for revenge, but to save the next quiet kid from breaking like she once did. But fate has a cruel sense of irony. As she stood before the students on her first day, introducing herself, the room buzzed with whispers, mocking her clothes, her posture, her soft voice. She ignored them, but the taunting escalated. One boy sneered from the back row and another joined in. Laughter echoed. Then, in a moment that would haunt them all, one of the boys grabbed her sleeve, tearing the fabric of her shirt. The class froze. The silence was sharp as glass. Ilara's expression didn't change. She simply looked at them and smiled. In that suspended silence, the boys expected her to scream, cry, or run. But she didn't. She stood tall, adjusted her torn sleeve, and continued roll call as if nothing had happened. Her voice didn't tremble. That unnerved them more than any punishment could have. The incident spread like wildfire through the school. Some laughed. Others waited for the inevitable: the complaint, the disciplinary board, maybe even police involvement. But nothing came. Ilara didn't report them. Instead, she asked the principal for one thing: permission to hold an open assembly the following morning. A class on empathy, she called it. The principal, too tired to argue, agreed. When the students gathered in the gym, they found a projector waiting and the words, Lesson 1, the mirror test, glowing on the screen. She began not with anger, but with a story about a girl. Fragile, awkward, bullied relentlessly in school. A girl who hid her bruises and tears, who believed she was invisible until she nearly made herself disappear for real. As she spoke, the room grew quiet. Her voice was steady, but there was weight behind every word. She described how cruelty shapes you, how laughter from the wrong people can echo in your head for years. Then she revealed the twist. That girl had been her. Gasps filled the air. The bullies shifted uneasily in their seats. The ones who had mocked her the day before stared at the floor. But she wasn't finished. Ilara turned off the lights. The screen flickered to a slideshow. Photos of former students who hadn't survived their bullying. Notes they left behind. A boy who jumped from a bridge. A girl who starved herself until her heart stopped. Real faces. Real names. You thought it was a joke, her voice echoed through the dark. But to someone, your laughter is a knife. The silence was suffocating. The same boys who tore her shirt sat motionless, faces pale, eyes wet. They weren't looking at her anymore. They were looking at themselves. Then Ilara did something unexpected. She pulled out a small box and placed it on the podium. Inside were letters, crumpled, faded, some tear-stained. These, she said, are letters I wrote when I was your age, to no one. Letters I never sent because I thought no one would care. I was wrong. Someone should have cared. She asked the students to write one too. An anonymous confession. Within minutes, the box overflowed. Words spilled out like wounds reopening. Some wrote apologies, others wrote secrets about abuse, loneliness, fear. The gym was silent except for the scratching of pens and muffled sobs. And then the bullies approached her, slowly, hesitantly. One of them, the same boy who had torn her sleeve, stood before her with trembling hands. He whispered an apology she didn't respond to. She simply looked at him, not with anger, but with the kind of silence that demands reflection. In that moment, they understood something profound. They had taken part in the same cruelty that had nearly destroyed the person now standing before them. And she had chosen forgiveness instead of vengeance. It broke them more than any punishment ever could. The next day, something shifted in St. Morton High. The laughter in the hallways grew quieter. The cruel jokes faded. The bullies who once terrorized others began standing up for them instead. Alara never spoke of the incident again, and she never replaced the torn shirt. She wore it like a quiet reminder, not of pain, but of transformation. Weeks later, the boy who had humiliated her came to her classroom after hours. He didn't say much, just handed her a folded note and left. Inside were 6 words that said more than any speech could. You made me see myself. Years passed, and students who once mocked her began to write back, from universities, jobs, new lives. They said her lesson had followed them, that it had changed how they treated others, how they spoke to themselves, how they understood pain. Alara never needed recognition. Her victory wasn't in punishment. It was in awakening, because sometimes the strongest revenge is compassion, and sometimes the loudest power is quiet truth. So the next time you see someone laugh at another's expense or stay silent while cruelty unfolds, ask yourself, are you the reason someone hides their pain or the reason they heal from it?